What happened when one of Hollywood's most lovable legends had a complete mental breakdown on live TV? You know, those moments when years and years of pent-up anger explode at the worst, most public time imaginable? Well, today we're spilling all the tea about the time Danny DeVito totally lost it on The View. And believe me, you've seen him in legendary roles, but you've never seen him quite like this. The tension was so thick in the room you could practically feel it through the screen. And what Joy Behar says next will make you fall off your chair. Before we jump into the heated argument, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below, because this story has more plot twists than a pretzel factory. It was just supposed to be a normal Tuesday morning for The View. Danny DeVito stopped by the show to promote his latest project. At this point, it's a pretty safe bet that Danny was expecting the standard lineup of soft, friendly questions about his iconic career and future endeavors. The legendary actor, known for his incredibly sharp wit and no-nonsense attitude, settles into the familiar panel of seats with a coffee cup in hand. He was ready for a nice, friendly, professional conversation. Or so he thought. Here's where things took a turn for the worse. A simple misunderstanding, or were the seeds being planted for a confrontation? Joy Behar was quick to get the ball rolling. With her signature smarmy grin, she leaned into her microphone, saying, "So Danny, you've been in Hollywood for decades now. You've seen it all. What do you think about all these young actors today that just cry and complain about everything? We just did our job back in the day, without all this drama, right?" Danny shifted slightly in his seat and raised his eyebrows ever so slightly. It was clear to anyone who was watching that the veteran actor wasn't going to play along. "You know, Joy, I think that every generation has their own unique struggles. These young actors today, they have social media and constant scrutiny and mental health issues that we simply weren't dealing with back when I first started." Danny was trying his best to keep it calm, but Joy was about to push his buttons just a little bit more. How much does one legend deserve to take before he strikes back? "Oh, come on!" Joy scoffed as she threw her hands in the air. "Mental health, social media drama. Give me a break. When I was coming up, we didn't have these safe spaces and participation trophies. We had real problems and real issues. These young Hollywood kids are just soft." A tense silence suddenly fell over the studio audience, and the other women on the panel exchanged uneasy glances at DeVito's shifting demeanor. His jaw tightened, and his friendly posture completely disappeared. However, he managed to keep his composure. "I wouldn't consider anxiety and depression being soft, Joy," he responded calmly, but firmly. "I think that's an incredibly dangerous point of view." Joy refused to back down. In fact, she doubled down, her tone laced with condescension. "Danny, it's a fact. You're from New Jersey. You know what tough means. These Hollywood brats whining about their feelings while they're making millions of dollars is embarrassing. They should just be grateful for what they have." The word grateful was clearly the final straw. The veteran actor's eyes flashed with an unexpected fury. "Grateful?" Danny's voice sharpened into a steel trap. "Joy, success does not make you immune from human emotions and mental health battles. The most successful and talented people that I know have struggled with depression and anxiety their whole lives." Still not done, Joy hit him back even harder, her voice now reaching an entirely new level of animosity and pushing the conversation toward an irreversible breaking point. What happened next would forever change the energy in the room. "Now everyone is a victim," Joy went on, her voice beginning to climb higher. "Everybody's got a sob story about what they're going through. Whatever happened to personal responsibility? What happened to just working it out yourself instead of dumping all your crap onto the rest of the world?" The normally adoring audience fell into a thick, awkward silence. They could feel it, the tension, the way Danny's knuckles were turning white around his coffee cup, and the famous mischievous glint was totally absent from his eyes. "Personal responsibility," Danny repeated slowly, his voice dropping to a deep, dangerous growl. "You want to talk about personal responsibility, Joy?" "Damn right I do," she shot back. "These kids, these young actors and artists need to stop whining and start taking responsibility for their own happiness. They need to stop blaming society. Stop blaming the industry. Stop blaming everyone but themselves." The room began to feel heavy, as if the storm was just about to break. Danny set his coffee mug down on the table with a soft, echoing thump. "So," Danny began again, his eyes locked to hers. "When a young actor kills themselves because they can't deal with the crushing pressure, that's just a matter of not enough personal responsibility?" It was a grave, devastating question that should have stopped the conversation dead in its tracks. But Joy didn't even bat an eye. "If a young person can't handle the pressure of being rich and famous, then perhaps they shouldn't have chosen that career," she answered dryly. There are plenty of people who would be thrilled to have the opportunities these kids have. Her words hung in the air like a poison cloud. The other hosts remained stiff, shifting in their seats uncomfortably, but no one was willing to intercede between them. Danny's face turned a deep shade of red, his breathing beginning to become heavy and rhythmic. "That's interesting, Joy," Danny finally said, his voice turning dangerously calm. The calm before a massive explosion. "So, you genuinely believe mental health is simply a matter of choice? You think people who are depressed are just being weak?" "I think people need to toughen up," Joy stated flatly, her shoulders shrugging with a know-it-all sort of ease. "My generation didn't have time for this coddling and hand-holding. We had real problems to deal with." "Real problems?" Danny echoed, nodding slowly and leaning forward slightly. "Tell me, Joy, what exactly were your real problems in the comedy world that were so much harder than this? What was so much more devastating about your experience?" For the briefest of seconds, Joy seemed uncertain, her eyes blinking as if searching for an appropriate response before she composed herself. "Well, for one, we didn't have all the resources that young people have today. We didn't have therapy on every corner and support groups for every little thing. We just had to deal with it ourselves." "Right," Danny said, his voice suddenly sharpening, slicing through her excuse. "You had to deal with it yourselves. And how did that work out for your generation, Joy? How many comedians from your era died decades too young because they were just dealing with it themselves?" "That's entirely different," Joy snapped, finally losing some of her composure. "Addiction is a disease. Mental health is a choice." A collective gasp seemed to sweep through the room. Danny's eyes widened with pure disbelief. "Did you just say that mental health is a choice?" he asked, his voice trembling with fury. "Did those words actually just come out of your mouth on national television?" The tension was so thick, it was almost tangible historical even as a beloved legend and a seasoned host waged war not over Hollywood, but over the intrinsic value of human life. "What will happen when the cameras are still rolling?" The cameras began to zoom in, catching every flicker of expression on Danny's face as his anger grew. But Joy, utterly unconcerned by the volatile situation, made the bizarre decision to one-up her comment. "Yes, I said that because it's true," she insisted. "Mental health is about mind, it is about attitude. If you decide to be positive, to be grateful, you will be more happy. It is really that simple." Suddenly, a chair scraped loudly against the floor, signaling that Danny had stood up. A jolt went through the set as everybody froze, expecting something. "It is that simple?" Danny asked in a voice no one had ever heard him use before. "Joy, do you have any earthly idea of just how unbelievably ignorant you sound right now?" The air seemed to drain out of the studio, were they witnessing the most definitive interview burn in history. "Ignorant?" Joy's voice began to spike higher, as if she had started to become self-aware as soon as Danny questioned her statement. "I am ignorant because I believe in responsibility and in positive thinking? You are ignorant because you have disregarded the actual struggles of an entire generation." Danny shot back, pointing. "You are ignorant because you think mental health is an attitude issue. You have completely discredited and dismissed the very thing millions of people fight for them to be heard, while sitting on your perch of misinformation on this show." From off-screen, producers are gesturing frantically to signal for a commercial, but it is too late. The man has snapped. Joy has just ignited the last string of the detonator. "Well, you know what, Joy?" Danny's voice booms now, filling the entire studio space. "I have been in this business for over 50 years. I have met hundreds of actors, young and old, with so much talent, and yet there were dozens of very gifted, very bright talents who lost everything, destroyed themselves, because they were convinced they felt exactly what you have just proclaimed today. That it was all just a state of mind. That they had to just tough it out." Joy attempted to interject. "Danny, I do not think you are handling this correctly. I do not think I am handling this correctly." Danny's reply is an ugly, mirthless laugh. "You have just declared to millions of people that the state of one's mental health is a problem of attitude. You have belittled the plight of every single depressed, anxious, and/or disturbed person watching this program. And I am not handling this correctly?" The other hosts on set are staring, transfixed and completely immobilized by the overwhelming emotion emanating from the beloved funny man. The audience remains silent as the iconic movie and television star defends a generation from a careless remark. "Danny, look," Joy begins pleadingly, as if to reclaim some semblance of control over the conversation. "I am not stating that the state of mental health is not real. It is real, I know that. But what I am stating is that today people use it as an excuse too often." "An excuse?" Danny's voice erupts like a fired shot. "An excuse to what, Joy? For being human? For having a fight? Did Robin Williams use his depression as an excuse? Did Philip Seymour Hoffman use his addiction as an excuse? Those were gifted, beautiful, talented artists fighting wars you do not have any knowledge or experience in. Hearing the names spoken aloud seemed to have cast a shadow over the studio. Danny had brought the conversation from a hypothetical maybe situation into the tangible reality of suffering and death. How would this interview conclude? An apology, or would Danny DeVito be walking out the door permanently? Joy's face turned a deep red of defensiveness, and her walls went up. "I did not mean that, and you know it," she snapped. "I am talking about a sense of entitlement among young actors who throw around terms like victim every time things don't go their way." Entitlement? Danny was right up to the panel, gesturing with a raw, emphatic energy that vibrated in the air. "You want to talk about entitlement? You're sitting on a platform, broadcast live, reaching millions of people, and you're using that to spew an ignorance that breeds a horrible, damaging stigma around mental illness. If that's not the definition of entitlement, I don't know what is." The room was silenced. This was no longer a difference in opinion. This was an ideological civil war on live television. Would Joy break, or would she push this legend too far? "I have every right to say my opinion," Joy retorted, her voice climbing in pitch to a shrill and defensive squeak. "This is America. I can say whatever I want to say." "You do have every right to your opinion," Danny said. But now there was a biting, venomous sarcasm to his tone. "And I have every right to tell you your opinion is dangerous, uninformed, and frankly disgusting." The word disgusting landed in the room with a thud that knocked the air out of its lungs. Joy's jaw dropped, her eyes wide with shock. She clearly was not expecting this kind of raw, unfettered honesty from the once affable actor. "Excuse me?" she stammered. "Did you just call my opinion disgusting?" "I called it what it is," Danny said, without a sliver of doubt in his voice. "It is disgusting to downplay the struggles of people suffering from internal wars. It's disgusting to continue the stigma that prevents individuals from seeking the help they need. And it's disgusting to stand up on a platform like this and spout the misinformation that could literally kill someone." The stakes were higher than they'd ever been. Danny wasn't just sticking up for the actors. He was sticking up for every person tuning in at home who felt unheard. Joy rose to her feet, meeting Danny's rising energy head-on. "How dare you come on my show, on my platform, and tell me what I can and can't say? I have been in this business for decades. I don't need a bloody actor to tell me how to do my job." "Your job?" Danny cackled, a sound that conveyed utter disbelief. "Is your job to spread an attitude problem? Is your job to shame individuals who are battling mental health issues? Because if that's the job description, Joy, then you are excelling at it." The room was electric with tension. Every camera in the building was focused on the two figures locked in combat, capturing a moment that was already going viral around the country. Millions watched, enthralled as a legend ripped apart a media mainstay. "I am not shaming anyone," Joy insisted, her voice lacking the confident authority of just minutes prior. "I am simply stating that people need to take more responsibility for their own happiness." "And what about those who are taking responsibility?" Danny bellowed, his voice resonating throughout the studio. "What about those who are in therapy, on medication, doing everything humanly possible to manage their health, and yet they are somehow not positive enough for you? Is their effort not good enough for you?" "That is not what I said," Joy screamed. "That is what you said." Danny's voice boomed, commanding the room. "You said that mental illness is just an attitude. You said that people should simply choose to be positive. Do you have any idea how much damage that message is causing? Do you know that right now there are individuals watching this show who may not take their medicine today because you told them that the issue isn't medical, it's simply an attitude?" Joy's composure was crumbling rapidly. "I never said that anybody should stop taking their medication." "You didn't have to say it out loud," Danny said, his voice low, heavy with the weight of truth. The implication was obvious. As the show teetered on the brink of utter chaos, one thing became crystal clear. Danny DeVito was delivering the performance of his career. And it wasn't coming from a script. This was real, raw, and an incident that Hollywood would never forget. What happens when you tell someone their depression is merely a bad attitude, and their anxiety is nothing more than them being soft? Danny's words were left hanging in the air. The other hosts were as much a spectator to a high-stakes tennis match, looking between Danny and Joy, with expressions of terror at wading into this highly personal battle. "You're putting words in my mouth," Joy stammered, her voice shaking slightly for the first time. "Am I?" Danny asked, reaching into his pocket and retrieving his phone with practiced calm. "Do you want me to replay the audio? Or should we just rely on the live audiences hearing what we heard? A low murmur rippled through the room, confirming the consensus. Joy's face flushed a darker shade of red. She was losing this argument, and she knew it. "Fine," she snapped, her arms crossing defiantly over her chest. "Maybe I should have phrased things differently. But my point is that there are many more people in this world than mental health problems." The room gasped. Was she going to bring up the one thing that would seal her fate? "A crutch?" Danny questioned, his jaw slack. "You literally just called mental illness a crutch to millions. Do you even know what that word means?" "I'm not saying mental illness itself is a crutch," Joy backpedaled, panic clear in her eyes. "I'm saying there are people who abuse it for their own benefit. And there are others who are using their illnesses as an excuse not to work on themselves." "Who, Joy?" Danny asked, his face inches from hers. "Give me names. I want to know who exactly is using their depression for attention and attention. I would really like to see them here to defend themselves on the air right now, please. You have the platform, what is wrong with you, girl?" Joy was rendered speechless as the crowd watched intently, waiting to hear the perfect response from a situation where no answer would seem appropriate. "I'm speaking in general terms," she finally mumbled, her eyes darting nervously. "No, you're not." Danny cut her off, his voice now as sharp as a razor. "You are making judgments about people without evidence and propagating harmful stereotypes that people have been dealing with for years and have now come under so much scrutiny and attack, especially the people in entertainment." The room fell silent. The only sound was the low hum of the camera equipment, capturing the defining moment. "The true problem, Joy," Danny said, his voice raising with every word. "The actual issue is that people like you have been telling the people they see as below them that their pain is invalid if it's not visible. The real issue is this disgusting culture where people think they know better than others about whose struggles are real enough to warrant compassion and help." Joy tried one last time. "I am not judging people's pain," she exclaimed desperately. "I'm just trying to make the point that there are different ways to respond to adversity. Some people are just better equipped than others to deal with life." "And there it is," Danny exclaimed, his eyes wide. "She's doing it again. She's implying that other people are not tough enough. She is saying that if they can't face their mental illness alone, then that is entirely their fault. Do you understand the damage that ideology has done over time?" Joy's face was as red as ever, her flawless makeup beginning to show the cracks of the mounting stress and the immense discomfort of the moment. "You are intentionally misconstruing everything I am saying so that you can try and make me look bad," she spat. Danny's gaze was glacial. "I don't need to try and make you look bad, Joy," he stated flatly, signaling the undeniable end of their acquaintance, and perhaps their friendship. "You are perfectly capable of doing that yourself. You're managing perfectly well with that yourself," Danny said, and the words echoed back with a chillingly sharp accuracy. "Everything that you're saying right now only makes you look worse." The room was so charged that finally, another of the hosts tentatively interrupted with a wobbly tone in his voice. Perhaps we should just have a commercial break," he asked, and glanced toward the wings of the stage in desperation. "No," Danny answered resolutely, staring Joy down like he was looking at an exhibit in a zoo. "We aren't having a commercial break. We are finishing this conversation because it's far too important. Joy, you started this, and we are going to finish it." The studio was literally a ticking time bomb. Would Joy finally decide to hold her tongue and offer an olive branch? Or was she about to go all in on a losing hand? Straightening her posture in an attempt to retrieve what she could of her dignity, Joy finally said, "Fine. You want to finish this, then we'll finish this. I stand by my statement. This generation is too sensitive and too entitled and too fast to jump to the victim card." "The victim card." Danny repeated the phrase in an echo of a sound of utter disbelief before he slowly shook his head. "You know what, Joy? I've been in rooms with real victims. I've held the hands of young actors who have tried to kill themselves, who couldn't handle the pressure, the sheer weight of shame they were made to feel and stand to lose their entire careers, of young people who have been hospitalized after trying to take their own lives. I've stood next to families as they were trying to wake their children from an overdose in an emergency room. I have stood in front of brilliant, talented, loved people who saw no other way to cope but that. You want to tell me that they're playing the victim card?" The raw emotion in his voice was absolutely heartbreaking. Across the studio, you could see that many in the audience had tears streaming down their face. "That is unfortunate," Joy said, as the words of 1,000 rehearsals poured from her lips, but lacked any real emotion and compassion to them. "But that is extreme. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the everyday complaints, constant whining, that things are just so hard, and what are they going to do about it?" "They are hard," Danny bellowed in her face. And why on earth would someone's level of fame protect them from human suffering? A paycheck won't stop childhood trauma. A salary won't cure you of clinical anxiety. The conversation had ceased being an interview and had become a full-blown debate for the human soul, and Joy wasn't done. What I'm talking about is when these young actors complain about their mental health when they have mansions they live in and luxurious cars that they drive around in. Money and power bring their own resources that the average person can only dream of, and I really have to wonder why it's still so difficult for them. And that, Danny said directly to her face, is precisely why it is so difficult. You truly believe suffering is only legitimate if accompanied by abject poverty. You genuinely think that pain only counts if you are financially destitute. Well, Joy, I really do have to question why it is so difficult for you to grasp the very basic concept that mental health and just human beings do not operate like that and never have. Crossing her arms defiantly in her seat, Joy said with eyes as cold as ice, I think perspective is very important. I think gratitude is just as important, and I think far too many young people have lost touch with both of those concepts in this world and in their careers. Perspective, Danny whispered, and a smile spread slowly across his face. Now that is something we can really talk about. The legendary actor had his final sentence ready as the whole world watched in a breathless hush. A moment where a much-loved star decided that some things like the truth were just more valuable than a polite conversation on television. You want to talk about perspective, huh? Fine, you want perspective, I'll give you perspective, Danny stated in a low, intense tone. When a young actor on a red carpet smiles at the cameras, they might be fighting every urge they have not to freak out. When they're interviewed, they might just be holding it together not to fall apart and cry. And when they go home to those mansions you're talking about, they might be alone, by themselves with their thoughts, and absolutely terrified. That's so dramatic, Joy replied, waving a dismissive hand. But that doesn't make them have any less advantages over the average person. You're right, they do, Danny said, which startled everyone around him. They have advantages. They have resources. But you know what else they have? They have people like you that tell them they can't be experiencing real pain because they're successful. They have people talking about their struggles and diminishing them because they don't fit into the who deserves a break category. The entire studio was at a standstill. Even the usually hyperactive production crew had stopped to watch the unraveling of everything. A palpable silence was heavy in the room. I never said that they couldn't experience real pain, Joy defended. The fierceness of her voice now somewhat gone. You said mental health is an attitude, Danny stated, his words hitting like small stones. You said it was a choice. You said they just needed to man up. If that's not telling someone that their pain isn't real, then I don't know what is. Joy was stuck, and her expression made it obvious that she knew that she was. Her every attempt to backtrack just dug a deeper hole. I think that we'll just have to agree to disagree on this one, she said, desperately looking for an escape. No, we won't agree to disagree, Danny shot back, his voice as solid as rock. This isn't a matter of opinion, Joy. This is a matter of decency. A matter of basic human decency. This is about whether we continue the stigma or show some compassion for the people who are drowning. I am compassionate, Joy retorted, her patience gone. You are? Danny raised an eyebrow. Is that what this entire segment has been? Compassion? Because it looked like judgments and dismissal and total ignorance to me. Off camera, the rest of the hosts were throwing panicked hands toward producers, pleading with them for a commercial or any kind of technical difficulties just to stop the interview. The cameras, however, were focused squarely on the pair. On right, Muttersham, you know what your problem is, Danny? Joy squeaked, her voice going to a high, shrill register. You're too concerned about being politically correct and protecting everyone's feelings that you can't see what's really going on. The truth of it is, some people are stronger than other people. Some people just take stress better than others. It is what it is. And you know what your problem is, Joy, Danny answered in an instant. Your strength is just suffering silently. Your taking stress is pretending you're fine while you're drowning internally. Your being strong is being so scared of being vulnerable that you refuse to get help. That's not strength, it's stupidity. The room erupted in gasps as Joy was stunned, her mouth agape as her face contorted in shock, then anger. How dare you, she stammered. How dare I what? Danny's voice thundered, amplifying in the studio. How dare I call out a lie when I hear it? How dare I call out harmful rhetoric when I see it? How dare I defend the people you just decided to trample on for the sake of a soundbite? The legend had spoken, leaving behind nothing but the shattered remnants of what had once been the interview. The debate had transcended beyond this single interview and onto what kind of a life we truly want to live. How dare I stick up for people who cannot stand up for themselves? How dare I use my platform to defend mental health and awareness instead of attacking it? That's incredibly disrespectful, said Joy, her tone finally softening from the anger and becoming more deflated than aggressive. It's honest, said Danny, his stare not wavering from her eyes. Honesty can come off as disrespectful when you are used to people agreeing with everything you say, but you deserve to be told what you did was wrong. You deserve to be told that your attitude toward mental health is dangerous. And today, it looks like it's my job. The two stared at each other at what was truly the peak of the entire exchange. Joy finally slid back in her chair as Danny stood still, the heavy breath he was trying to hold escaping from his chest. The air in the studio was now thick with the tension that only the power of a man speaking his truth can cause. I think we've said enough, Joy muttered through her tears, unable to lift her eyes to meet his, staring instead at the carpet as if searching for answers. Have we? Danny boomed. I don't think you've heard anything from this. I don't think you understand the destruction that your words can bring down. I don't think you care how many people you could be hurting by what you just did. Joy still couldn't answer, continuing to stare blankly at her hands as if they were responsible for some mistake she did not recognize. I thought so, Danny whispered, and took a deep breath and re-straightened his jacket. He took a few steps forward, past the table of hosts and toward the television screen where a camera was directly on him. And I just want to say to anybody watching right now who is struggling with their mental health, your pain is real, your struggles are valid, and there is no greater strength than to ask for help. Don't let anyone tell you any differently. And with those empowering last words, Danny DeVito walked off of the stage. He did not turn to look back. The camera still rolled for a few long, devastating moments, broadcasting the sheer stunned silence that Danny had left behind. The hosts on the stage were statue-like, their faces frozen in shock from the single most incredible argument seen on daytime television. The studio audience sat with bated breath, trying to process the sheer magnitude of the truth they had just heard. Joy continued to stare at the now empty chair at the table, her typically poised demeanor completely shattered. This wasn't a fight about movies or fame. It was a cultural crisis that revealed the societal gulf between people in regards to mental health. And today, one Hollywood actor showed the entire world that the power of human empathy still exists, as he didn't promote a movie, but an idea. We want to know what you think of Danny's explosive display today. Was he out of line, or was Joy completely wrong with her statements? Tell us in the comments below, and subscribe for more moments that changed television.